This is the Take It or Leave It podcast, and this is a show that is by and for creatives who are looking for practical ways to sharpen their skills or to share their influence with others around them. I am your host, Houk, and 3 years ago, I took a thriving freelance side hustle and went full-time into building a design business here in Cleveland, Ohio. You know, design work is not just a job for me. It's really a passion. And this podcast is another way for me to interview those who have influenced me and those who have been privileged to meet, as well as talk over the topics that have helped me grow in my craft and I know will help you grow in yours. If you are just starting out or you're an experienced creative, feel free to take what you can use today or leave it for someone else or sometime else for you in the future. This is season 3, episode 1, and today's topic is very simply the importance of graphic design. Thanks for joining us today. Here we go. We all know that media is super important. We know that graphic design is important. And I've described graphic design as this. Graphic design is a way to transcend borders and cultures and even languages. For 8.5 years, I worked at a church that was very diverse in the sense that there was multiple cultures and multiple languages within the church. And I have found that when I was doing a project, I was always asked, make sure that it is in 3 languages at least. Man, that was so overwhelming. Because how do you communicate something to 3 different types of people and cultures? Obviously, all of us have different opinions of design and different things, what attracts us, what doesn't. But 3 different cultures where one color in one culture can mean something completely different as another. And so I wanted to kind of share just some things that I think are important that you know about graphic design, especially if you work at a church. Maybe you're not a creative. Maybe there's a lot of people that listen to the podcast that are not in the creative field, but they do work at a church or they volunteer at a church. And so I wanted to kind of share some things that have helped me communicate this to people that we work with. I've taken a few design classes when I was trying to pursue my master's in design, and I quickly quit that, I guess, just because there was some things that just weren't relevant, and I felt like it was more of a waste of time on my end when I could just go to YouTube and learn just as much. But some of the classes I did take were on the history of art. And I was just amazed of how much of the art comes from Christianity. And regardless of where you draw the line, like I'm not Catholic, I'm not this, regardless of that, because all of that has been influential in art too. But what I'm saying is art had many of its founding roots in Christianity. In the last few decades, I've seen some churches look down on the creative arts as evil and wicked. I think we need to make our way back to understand how important it is, because I really believe there's churches that have deviated away from art so much that you've alienated people that are supposed to respond to that. If you think about who we are as human beings, we respond to beautiful things. We respond to creative things. We respond when a sunset goes down, we ooh and all over it. Why? Because it's beautiful. God created us that way. God is a designer. God is a creator. He is the amazing creator that created you and me with the desire to have ideas, the desire to have creativity and act upon it and respond to it. And so if you're working at a church right now, like you need to understand that graphic design is not going away and it's time to embrace it. Graphic design and creativity as a whole, whether it's in the sound and the audio and the visual and the videos and the animation and all of these different things, your brand, your logo, your colors of your church and the walls of everything that produces a reaction from people. And if there's any message in the world that needs better representation, it's the gospel of Jesus Christ. What better message, what message in the world deserves a more beautiful picture? So I wanted to share some things. First and foremost, graphic design is important because it creates a first impression. Just like everything else, whether it's a website, a video, whatever it is, music, anything, it causes a first impression. And in today's world with COVID and all this stuff that we've experienced in 2020, Graphic design is still relevant, and it's plain and simple. Great design will create a great response. Customers and consumers and members and potential people in your community, they're going to have positive opinions about your brand, about your church. And regardless of, I have churches all the time that they don't like the word marketing. They don't like the word branding. That's essentially what your church is doing. Reaching out to somebody in your community, soul winning, anything like that, whatever you call it, it's marketing. Marketing and branding, I think, are very important terms that every church should understand and clarify. The second thing is professional graphic design actually saves money. I can't tell you how many times we've had people contact us and they wanted to hire us, but then we sent them a proposal, which most graphic designers will do. We'll send a proposal and we'll never hear back from them, or we'll say, that's not in our budget, and that's fine. We're not meant to work with everybody. And you definitely can find somebody perhaps in this community that could definitely charge you less. But my experiences with some of those people, they've come back after a few months or a few years, and they said, you know what? We tried to go down the cheap route, but it's just not working for us. And I thought about it this way. If you have mistakes in your brochure, if you have a messed up website and you went and got a free template from somebody, it's going to cost you more in the long run to fix that. It's going to cost you more in the long run to get it right. I look at graphic design, and I've talked to several people on this that are in the industry and not in the industry, but they all agree that it's an investment. It's not just part of your budget. It should be a mindset that says, I'm investing in this because it's a skill that I don't have. It's a skill that I can't provide, but I understand the value in it. A few weeks back, we had a leak in our kitchen through the roof. I went to Home Depot. I was asking the person in the roofing department, what should I get or what materials? And they were saying, you should get this. And they pointed me to a product that I've seen on TV. And I think it was even on the Shark Tank maybe. And they said, man, this thing works incredibly well. Finally, I did all of those things, and still the leak was not fixed. In fact, that leak was plugged, but then there was another one that was probably about 12 inches away that started again. I was frustrated. I was ticked. I was mad. So then I started doing what I should have done and started calling roofing companies. And I started figuring out what was wrong with the roof, where the leak was coming from. Was it one shingle? Was it multiple parts of the shingle? Was it the entire roof? I don't know what the problem was, but I needed it fixed. It has taken us months to finally fix it. And finally, I had a guy who didn't just go up on the roof and inspect it and tell me what his thoughts were, but he actually went on the roof. He uncovered some shingles. He took pictures. He showed me exactly where the holes were, where he believed it was. And it didn't get fixed the first time that he fixed it, because he said, I don't know if I got it or not. Let me know next time it rains. And sure enough, the next day it rained. Sure enough, there was still a trickle. And I said, hey, and he came out and he fixed his mistake, and he fixed it for free. And he made sure that it was right. I can guarantee you the next time I need a complete roof redone, I'm going to call that guy, because he was the only one that dug up the problem and tried to fix it. And when he couldn't fix it right, he said, I know where the problem is now. I'm going to fix it right the second time. I say all that to say this. I didn't have the guy at Home Depot come over to my house and fix my stuff. I didn't have anyone in my family who I was texting saying, hey, what do you guys think it is? I definitely couldn't fix it because I'm not a roofer. I'm not a person of that industry. It was only until I called someone for the roofing company to come, and they were able to pinpoint the exact problem and the exact point where my pain was coming from. I say all that to say this. When it's come to graphic design, you need to call a graphic designer. You need to call someone who does this as a profession. And as a church, you have no excuse to put the pressure on a youth pastor who is trying to minister to youth and do all the media stuff, that he has no skill and maybe he has no desire to do it. I've talked to some youth pastors that have hired us, and they said, man, my pastor asked me to do this, and I want to do it because he asked me to do it. And I want to please him, and I want to do my best and all this stuff. In the long run, they didn't even have a passion to do it in the first place. They were just asked because they were like the cool youth hip pastor or whatever. and they just were expected to kind of know all those things. Um, if you're going to put a huge focus on graphic design, you need to give it to a professional. You wouldn't ask someone who doesn't know anything about plumbing to come fix your plumbing. You're going to ask a certified plumber. You're going to ask a certified roofer. You're going to ask someone who provides that as a service, as a profession. And I firmly believe that graphic design, media as a whole, videography, whatever you want to clump into this creative realm, that deserves your attention as well. The third thing, your graphics set you apart from the competitor. Now, I understand churches will say, well, we have no competitor. We're all one in Jesus. I understand that. But there are some places that maybe have churches that are very close together and some churches that are farther apart. And you may not agree on every issue and you may not agree on everything. And you may understand that your church has more to offer to a family or to a community than the other church. What I'm saying is I've seen some churches in the same community, and one is gravitating more people. And I know churches aren't about crowds, okay, but churches do involve people, and the goal is to get people and to reach them. And there's some churches that have thousands of people, and there'll be a church down the road that only has a handful. Have you ever thought of maybe it's your presentation? Maybe it's the visuals. Maybe it's the things that you're trying to portray in the community, your brand. Maybe it has some negativity associated with it. Maybe it's not done correctly. Maybe your strategy is off. There's so much more than just designing pretty pictures that a designer can offer. They can offer their experience of working with hundreds of other churches around the country. It could be maybe even their actual education. Maybe they took marketing classes. Maybe they worked and interned at a marketing firm. They could provide immense value to your church and to your business even. And so really professional graphic design will set you apart from your competitors, and people have choices. They're going to choose your church or the other one. And I'm not saying it all comes down to graphic design, but graphics do set you apart from your competitor. But then also graphic design conveys credibility and professionalism. It conveys credibility. The phrase perception is everything. It does come into play with graphic design. Companies that invest in quality graphic design, they're usually more trustworthy. And you can say whatever you want to say about that. I don't think that's manipulation. I just think that is a value that people place upon graphic design. They say, hey, this is a value and this is something that we're serious about, and it portrays an impression on people. And so we're going to use that as an asset. There's a credibility and there's a professionalism that comes with that. Customers are usually looking for signs of professionalism because that's what they're used to. When you go to a store, you're not expecting everything to look cruddy. You want a level of professionalism. You want clean bathrooms. You want clean, entryways. You want happy people that work at your business. Why wouldn't we want that at church? So there's a lot of things like that, take your church to the next level. Don't put the grouchiest person at your entryway, welcoming visitors. Don't do crazy things like that. Like just because they have tenure, just because they've been there forever, doesn't grant them a position at the entryway greeting people. Give it to the best and the best volunteer you can, the most excited volunteer you can. There's so much more you can do as far as the level of professionalism and credibility, more than just graphic design, but everything that you do as a church, be thoughtful in it. And then the last thing graphic design does, it helps tell your story. And man, people gravitate towards stories. That's how we're built. I can't think of a greater story to wrap people in than the story of Jesus. Like that should be why people come to church. I'm not coming to church because I want to hear a specific pastor. I don't want to come to church because I like that song, although that may help. I want to come to church because I want to be around people and in an environment that draws me closer to Jesus. And I can't tell you how great it feels when you're sitting in a service and the music and the lights, the sound, the graphics, the presentation of the MC or the pastor or anybody else, how all of that, the moment you walk onto a campus and the smiles that you see, even through the masks, but everything that you're experiencing, how that all plays a huge part into someone being wrapped into the story of Jesus. How much more this season of our lives, where we're cooped up in a basement, we're cooped up in a house, how much more do we need Jesus than ever before? And I really believe God has given us resources. He's given us tools. He's given us things that we can't ignore anymore. And one of those things I really believe is graphic design. Not just because I'm in it, but because I firsthand worked in the middle of all that. 8.5 years I worked at a church. It was one of the things I did. But I realized how powerful of a thing it had on people. And so I want to encourage you, if you're listening to this and you're creative, take your craft seriously. Like, don't downplay it. What role you're in is very important. If you work at a church, you volunteer at a church, maybe you do this for your church for free, or for maybe they give you Starbucks gift cards. I don't know. Take your craft seriously. And if you work at a church on a staff and you are trying to increase and take your church to the next level, really understand the importance of graphic design and how it plays a huge part in all the things we discussed. Share that with somebody. Share that with your senior pastor. Share that in a staff meeting. Whatever you can take from this episode, understand this, that design was given to us by God, because God's a designer. That's who he is. It's clearly seen, Genesis to Revelation, all throughout the Bible. You see how God is a creative God. He is a designer God. We want to thank you for listening to the Take It or Leave It podcast, and we really hope that you were able to walk away with a takeaway. If you enjoyed and were helped by what you heard today, we would love for you to leave us a review. Give us a 5-star rating on the podcast platform you're listening on today. If you're watching this on YouTube channel, give us a feedback in the comment section below. Be sure to subscribe, get notifications sent to you every time an episode drops. But we want to thank our partners over at Pro Church Media as well. If you don't already follow them, we encourage you to follow them on Facebook, on Instagram. Visit their website at prochurchmedia.com. Join us next week as we get to know a Pro Church community member, Isaiah Smoot from Maryland. You're not going to want to miss it. Thanks for listening today. Don't forget to rate the show. But until next time, keep being creative.